So this first session, we're going to have 4 sessions. The first session, we're going to introduce concepts, put together a stored procedure report. In the second session, each session will review the concepts from the previous session, and then we'll introduce new concepts and we'll modify an existing report. So we talk about a stored procedure library, and so what a stored procedure library is a library of stored procedures, essentially, where we can retrieve data from the database. Okay, and a stored procedure is a routine that will extract data from the database. And when we use stored procedures to generate our reports, we have an advantage in that all the business rules are adhered to for us. So if there's an issue with a report, the solution is generally through the stored procedure, and then that issue is cleared for all the reports. And so when we have a brand new stored procedure, sometimes we'll have bugs associated with it, and they're cleared for everyone. So basically we have a couple different classes of stored procedures that we primarily work with. We have other as well, and here's some examples of our R class, and R stands for report. But we'll show you how to access those procedures. And then we have the tget class, and we have quite a few more than what's listed here, and we'll add to it in our documentation in this webinar. So we have some other reports, like summary contracts is driven from an SOC stored procedure. So you could actually make that summary contracts look however you want it. I mean, with some limitations, but generally probably make it look the way you want it to if you want it to look different. And then we have a stored procedure, for example, for the customers and vendors that we identify here. The income statement, there's the stored procedure there. The balance sheet stored procedure is called balance sheet. And then there's some other concepts as well. But, okay, so today the objective is just to introduce you to the concepts and put together a stored procedure report. Okay, so we're going to go into Crystal Reports. And for you guys, most of you will have start all programs, and then you'll have to add to it that way. You can open Crystal Reports from within Toolbox. If you go to Custom Reports and Forms and highlight the item. So, or in the TimeSuite product as well. Here we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to start a new report. All right. I'll say new. I'll say standard. This is just a wizard that will tie into our database. Most of the reports are created with a default ODBC driver called Toolbox. So we'll just stick with that convention. So if you edit an existing report, sometimes you'll have to tie it to your own database. With a lot of the users, we create a Toolbox data source through ODBC, and the Toolbox, and we define it in a way that it points to their own database. So then when they edit reports, they don't have to deal with changing the data source. So you'll see Toolbox, and then you'll see tables and stored procedures. Okay. If you don't see stored procedures, there's a preference that you have to turn on, and I'll go through those preferences in a little bit. So we're going to scroll down to one of the stored procedures. So if we go to, for example, we're looking for the stored procedures after the SuperSoft proc concept, and we're going to go to the R's. So we have an R job status, okay? So we'll just pull that one in. You don't have to pick a job number there, but I'll pick one anyway. So we'll click close, and then this becomes the only table that will be in the report, and I'll correlate that to a couple of the other screens. So we'll say next here, we'll just pick a couple columns, because we'll populate the rest of it once we get into the designer. Most of what you will work with is the designer. This is basically if we want to do, I'm just going to click finish. If we want to create a report with that wizard, I would say that most of what you're going to do is edit an existing report. We're going to create one from scratch just to kind of illustrate the concept. And then in our next session, we'll actually edit some existing reports and modify them. So here we have, for example, what the designer did for us. We have a job column, job name, that kind of thing. Now, in your setup, if you click on View and Toolbars, you'll see this Supplementary Tools area, and that's what's down here. And I'm going to turn it on again because by default it's turned off. So you'll want to turn up View and then Supplementary Tools. Okay. So then when that comes up, you get your supplementary toolbar. This icon right here, if you click on it, it'll bring up a visual of your tables. Now, if you click on any report, you'll see that now stored procedure reports, by definition, only have one table. It shows up as one table, but this is actually a lot of tables with a lot of columns pulled in. And it makes it more of a drag and drop concept, and it simplifies Crystal reports tremendously. And that's what we want. We want it to be simple, and we want you to be able to get done what you need to get done. Okay. So for example, if we look at this Stored Procedure Libraries tab, we can create job status reports. We can do summary contracts. We can do agings, customizable agings, income statement, balance sheet, that kind of thing. So if we edit the income statement, for example, we'll back up and we'll edit a report just so you can kind of see how that looks. File, open, and then we'll map. It'll probably be mapped to our reports folder. So here it'll be C Toolbox Reports. In your case, it might be T Reports. That's what most multi-user companies are. Most of our customers are multi-user. So if you're single user, it would be C Toolbox Reports. Otherwise, it would be T Reports. Some users have different conventions, but that's predominantly the convention we follow as far as your file and folder system is concerned. So here we're going to do the income statement. And pretty sure this is the comparative income statement. That's not the one we want. Let's do this. Just do balance sheet. Not remembering the name of it. And you'll see the stored procedures here. Okay. If we go over here to this multi-period income statement, you'll notice that there are tables that are linked together. And this is a fairly simple, straightforward report where we're looking at 5 tables out of the database, and all the columns in the tables are available. The problem with this kind of report is, first of all, you have to know the table links, right? So this GL account type ties to the type in the GL accounts table. This GL sum table is a table keeps track of the totals of the transactions by day and by GL account and department, that kind of thing. I'm just giving you an example. So parent would be like if you want to group by the parent account and the division tie-in, division table tie-in. So it can be complicated and there can be a lot to know about the table system, and that's why it's better just to use the stored procedures. The complex reports are generated with stored procedures for the most part, and the reason the complex reports are generated with stored procedures is because it allows us to control the quality of the report. So if you have a complex report, there's generally a stored procedure that's produced for it. You know, like if it's a commitments report, like a PO subcontracts report, or if it's an income statement, if it's a summary of contracts. Let's look at the summary of contracts report, just as an example. So this is what it looks like in Crystal. And we'll get you acclimated to these concepts as we go, okay? So but if we look at this, click on that icon, you can see it's called SumCon Worksheet is basically what it's called. So we should probably, and our naming conventions on some of our older stored procedures are a little bit cryptic because the programmers, developers, were in charge of naming them at one point. And they didn't necessarily take into consideration that our users would be using their stored procedures to generate reports. So, but that's the way to go. So these are a little more cryptic. They're more run-on variable names, but you can kind of get the idea. Okay, so that's some examples of some stored procedures. We're over here. We're going to create a report, and this is a job status report because we're going to basically pull it from this job status item. Now, one thing about the different classes of reports, the TGET reports that's a class of stored procedure library, and then the R class is a little different. In the R class, basically, our objective is to keep the report very fast. So you're not going to find date ranges in these reports. If you want a date range, you'll go to the TGET class. So the non-date range reports are going to be in this section, and they might be much quicker to pull together. Now, the payroll history, there is an exception to that, in that if the report is at the base level, we will do a date range. When we're pulling the payroll history, the data that we're pulling in is at the transaction level. So then we can do a date range without really affecting the speed of the report. A job status report is really at a budget level item or a bill code level item. And then we might have the cost on those items. We might have the commitments on those items. We have the budgets relating to those budget items, the projected numbers, so on and so forth. And because we might want to say, okay, what's the period costs versus job to date costs? That's where we're going to use a TGET class report, because the period is going to slow pulling data for a specific date range is going to really slow it down. It's still fast, it's still very rapid, but compared to what, if you consider what you're doing, but this class is faster. And so as we move forward in our development cycle, the thing that we've identified we want to do, especially in the, as we're doing the time suite stuff that we have not released the beta on, is that we want it to be very rapid and fast. And the Toolbox product, the older product, is, for the most part, very fast. And sometimes you'll have a report that doesn't come in fast, so, just as an example, we had a customer call about, 2 or 3 months ago about a report that was pretty slow. So we redesigned the report, and we re-architected actually a little bit the table system to make the report work fast. And now the report comes in up in like 3 seconds for a very large project, where before it was taking a couple of minutes. So if there's a report that comes in really slow, then maybe let us know. These TGET status reports, they're probably 20 to 40 seconds on a very large job to pull up the report. The same report here should kind of take maybe less than 5 seconds. So those are the concepts. So we're going to go back over here. And we're going to create a job status report, but I'm also going to open up a job status report so you can kind of see what it's supposed to look like. So here we have a job status report. Now, the status concept in our system has to do with taking the numbers after the budget, so original budget, change orders, revised budget, committed total, balance, actual cost, percent complete, to complete, total estimated cost. This is the projected number. So we don't modify the revised budget we modify the projected budget, the projected number through the job status grid, and then we're coming up with a variance. And the variance is really the difference between our revised budget and where we're thinking we're coming in, where we're going to come in now. So how are we doing versus the budget? So we'll spend a minute correlating the report. So we come into this report here, for this job, and we go to the job status grid. And this is the same kind of information here summarized. We go into the job status .NET grid. So basically, this is what we're going to end up with, a semblance of this item. And so if we look at this report's actually done with the tget job status, which is very similar to the R, except this one's going to do a lot of period costs. You'll see that you can actually do a date range on it with a cutoff date, that kind of thing. So come back over here to this report, and we're going to have a similar stream of variables. Okay, so then let's go ahead and do that. Let's say the job number we're going to want in a header, maybe somewhere, maybe with the job name. This one has a print date defaulted in. We'll put that over on the right. That's our convention. I'm going to remove these headers. Okay, so in the stored procedures, generally there's, okay, so let's look at, let me back up a little bit. If I go database, or I'm sorry, insert and field object, you're going to get this field explorer window. And basically you've got your database, your formula fields, your parameters, which is how you filter the report. Running total fields, and we'll go through that, I think, in the next session, in database fields. So if we go to the database fields, if we have many tables, they'll show up here. Excuse me. If we have a stored procedure, you'll just see one stored procedure. And so if we look at the stored procedure from here, at this standpoint, you'll see all the variables that are included in the stored procedure. So there's a ton of things here, actually. One thing to note, toward the bottom of the stored procedure, you should have a company name. So this is a quick way for you to put your company name in there in your report. And so if I have multiple entities, it depends on the company you're in. When you run the report, it'll pull that in. Okay, so if we kind of just cruise through here, here's a bunch of information on the job at the job level. So this would be the total for the job. Bill code, this would be the schedule of value line item total. And remember, the budget line items, there can be many budget line items tied to one schedule of value line item. So the bid amount columns, they'll tie into the bid item grid, so you can, this stored procedure has ties to that as well. And there can be many bid items to each budget item, so, and many budget items to each schedule value item. So here, so let's just take a look at it, and let's just try to reproduce something similar to what we just saw. And we'll say, here's a budget amount. We'll just start with that. Now when I drag it and I put it in this details column, so in the report writers, they all kind of work the same way. There are some report writers that are a little different than this, and that they're like a report genie concept where things are a little easier to see, but they start to limit, those report writers really limit themselves on what you can get done. So the report writers that are very capable, they'll have sections, and like the base data that's coming in from the tables will go into this details section, and then you might have groups, right? And we'll add a group here in a little bit. You have a page header and a report header concept. Okay, so we're just worried about the details. We're going to pull in the budget amount. We're probably going to pull in like the budget code. Move this budget amount. Let's see. that down so I can move this one over because this is behind it. Crystal Reports is, I think it's a great thing for you to get into because it really gives you access to the data in the database in a format. You know, hopefully we don't have a lot of companies that do a bunch with Excel, but we do come across them where they just do a lot in Excel, and you know, a lot of times they're just not familiar with the reporting we have in the system because it is very comprehensive, and they should be able to get the reporting they need. But you know, if they need something different, modifying an existing report is simple if you've gotten acclimated to the development or the tool, the Crystal Reports tool. Okay, so here we pick the budget code, and just like Excel, you know, there are certain Windows keys you can, if I hit Shift and left arrow, it'll make it smaller, that kind of thing. We'll put this one in here, the budget description. Okay, and then we're going to do, we can do like the note that you put in the budget screen is right there. I'll correlate that for you. So we go into this section here, double click on any of them. There's an edit here, that description, that's the note we're referring to. So sometimes you'll see note copy versus note, okay? Now there's a reason for that. This note field is an unlimited length. It could be millions of bytes, you know, it could be millions of gigabytes. It could be 2 terabytes actually, close to 2 terabytes because there's a limit per table of 2 terabytes in this SQL 11. But anyway, so that's a lot of data, and there's a limitation with the databases in that if I create a formula field, it's not going to show that. So if I'll illustrate that concept for you real quick and introduce you to the formula editor at the same time. So if I come in here and I say we're going to create a test variable. If I come up here to the report, I go to demo, and there's my table, which is a stored procedure. I don't see budget note, I just see budget note copy. And that's usually what we do is we usually do like the first 300 characters. And that in that context, this is you don't get the budget note for your formulas, even though you can put the budget note in there are ways to work around it actually, but you can put the budget note in to your report, you just can't put it in a formula. So the budget note copy can be put in the formula, that's why we make the copy. So here we had the note and the note copy. If we wanted the note, no problem, we can put it on the report. Okay. So then we have other concepts here. So we have, so we started with the budget amount, and we're going to skip the change orders, and the revised budget is already going to be there. So we could put the direct type in there. Whoops. Control Z or edit undo will keep you out of trouble, like I accidentally did that kind of thing. So if I hit Control Z, it'll take me back to where I was at. So this is my header. Make that smaller. Move this over a little bit so I can put my type in there. So now that'll say something like labor, material, sub, equipment, other. Okay, so then try to keep it as simple as possible. Here we have actual costs. We'll put that in there. So there's our budget, there's our actual cost, there's our projected amount. This is where we think we're going to come in on the job now if we're doing the job status grid. Like the cost plus committed, there's a ton of stuff on cost plus in here. This is very comprehensive, and if you can't find what you're looking for, usually you're just not looking hard enough. You can do a support call and call me and I can tell you about it. And sometimes we get calls like that and we actually add things to the stored procedure because it's very quick and easy to add to the stored procedures, and that way you get what you need. If I want to see how much has been paid on it, I can pull that in on the cost. So here's our committed hours. See, did we put the committed costs in there? Not yet. So we'll put the committed costs in there too. So that kind of gives us an idea on what we're going to do. And then let's say we have this level 1 code. So this would be like the root code. If I come over here to my job, this would be 02 would be my level 1 code. 03 would be my level. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and create a group. Okay, and so when we create a group, it groups by the code and subtotals by the code. So it'd be similar to doing, hopefully I can pull up these other .NET grids, just to show you the concept behind the group. Pull up this job list. Okay, so let's say I wanted to group by customer. So here I'm pulling up the group, and so now every customer's jobs are grouped together. So that's what I'm doing here. If I insert a group in Crystal Reports, it's going to do exactly that. So let's go back over here. Let's do that. We'll say insert a group, and we're going to say by level 1 code. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to subtotal. So if I right-click on a field, I can say insert subtotal. When it comes up, I can say insert summary fields for all groups. There's only one group, so I'm going to say that. And then I'll say insert a grand total as well. Another way to do the grand total is say insert grand total, and then click OK. So I say insert subtotal. And notice it gives me the first thing I can do is my group. So I'm just going to go with that. So now I'll do subtotals on each of them. Okay, so now let's preview the report, see what it looks like. And maybe it's going to come up here. Okay, so you can see the data is coming in on that job, that 1207 job. It takes time to clean up your headers and make everything look pretty. But you can see our level 2 code is here. Okay, we come down to the bottom of the report. We're going to get our totals. So there's our budget, our actual costs. So we come back over here to this side, and we go over to our job list, and we'll print. We'll just for this one job, we'll print this dashboard. And so then our budget's there, the 225,503. The actual cost is 65. I need to rebuild that actual cost. 65,160, and then our projected number. Yeah, so we need to rebuild that job, but what we paid and what the commitments are on the job. So that's a quick look at generating a stored procedure report. So it's a fully functional report that needs to be cleaned up and made pretty. let's review the things that we've done so far, and then we'll add a few concepts to the report to get you to introduce you to them. So come back over here, and so we created a report. Okay, and two ways to get to the reports. You can go File, Open an existing report. Or you can go File, New, and it's going to take you into this wizard. And you pick your database, data source. And after you pick the data source, it's pretty, you might pick a couple fields and click Finish, and it'll basically pull you into the designer. That's a quick and easy way to create a report from scratch. Okay, so this is what we created. Adding fields to reports. We covered that because what we did was we said insert field object, and we drug our fields onto the report this way. So let's put some more documentation in here. So we said insert field explorer. And then we expanded the database file, then we expanded the stored procedure. So then we take and we drag this into the detail section, and the detail section is here. So when we drag it into the detail section, it will actually place the header on there for us. To change the width of the column, we do this kind of stuff. Okay. Okay. So we're going to create some variables. We're going to talk about some preferences as well. Okay. So the preferences we typically want to do would be File, and then we go to Options. So let me see what we have. We have preferences here. And so let's do this. Okay, and we'll cover those in this session. Okay, so when we go to the Preferences tab, we're going to set up preferences so stored procedures can be shown on the table in the report. And this is our sequence file. So remember when we were over here and like if you come into this section, you'll see something similar. If I click on Table, Add, whoops, cancel, Table, Add Table, you'll get your ODBC, get something that looks like this. And so you go to ODBC, go to a data source, whoops, the toolbox data source. And if you only see tables, that means you've got to set this preference. Okay, and we talked about that before. So if I come over here, the preference to make sure those stored procedures show up would be to File, go to File, Options, and then under database, you say click on this Store Procedures checkbox in the Show section. So File Options Database, click Store Procedures. Okay. To see the supplementary toolbar, View Toolbox, click Supplementary Toolbar. We covered that already. So View, Toolbar, and check Supplementary Toolbar, and that will turn this section on here. Okay, so two ways to get you to see the columns in your tables. One is to click this icon, which brings up your Visual Link Expert. So this is your Visual Link Expert icon. So the supplement shows at the bottom of your screen. Okay. And provides provides access to the Visual Link Expert. Okay, so then the second way to access the fields would be go to Insert Field Object. So we got our database, our formula, our parameters, our running total, group name fields, and special fields. And I almost never deal with the group name fields, but we're going to deal with the parameters, formulas, running totals in this webinar. So then you would go Insert Field Explorer. So the two ways to access your data would be here. So the default preferences, when you set up a report, the reports were all designed with these default preferences set. So you've got to set those when you install Crystal. If you've never set them, you'll need to set them so that we all kind of do things the same way. The report, designing the report, displaying the numbers on the report will be consistent if you do that. So here if we go, this is our TimeSuite standards, TimeSuite Toolbox standards basically. Show grid lines in design would be to do this File, Options, Layout, Show Grid Lines in Design. Okay, so File, Options, and then Reporting, Layout. Okay, so it was File, Options, Layout, check Show Grid Lines in Design. So Show Grid Lines in Design is right there. And what that does is it will show where everything's, the columns, puts those dots in for your columns, and that's really important in the presentation. We want it to be very lined up. Now, when you put these items, these markers on the top, if you click up here, you'll put a marker in there, right? And so what you want is you want your field to be butt up against each one of them. And if I hold my Shift key down and I hit, basically, it'll snap to it, kind of a concept. What's nice about that is when I move let's say I need to move it left or right, everything's going to move with it. Notice how it moves. Now these columns are not snapped to that grid line, and so because they're not snapped to it, they're not moving with it. So it's important to get that done. That way, if I need to modify the report, it's going to be a simple and easy process. I mean, we're usually trying to add columns to reports, and if I accidentally move that like off it'll disappear. If I hit Control-Z or Alt-Edit Undo, it puts them back on. So that's a really good thing to know. So notice how if I move left and right here, these variables are snapped to this left grid line, but not to the right grid line. So just if you hold your Control key down, you can highlight many of them, just a Windows convention, right? And just hold your Shift arrow right, and it'll snap them all to the grid line. So I've spent more time messing with the visual aspects of the reports than actually generating reports. So now, just save our work. Saving often is a big deal too, so you don't lose your work. That's what's nice about Google Docs; it saves it for you, right? Okay, so then we add another preference. We're going to field. What we're doing with these numbers is we're setting them to where the left and right parents are in place. You ever see a report where the columns are off a little bit? Like if I change this format to like a minus sign rather than a parenthesis sign, you'll notice that now the columns don't line up. So that's why the consistency. And by default, Crystal changes it to this, and we use this, more of an accounting concept. Okay, so then to get that done, you just go File, Options, Fields, and then Numbers. And you go to Number again, and you'll click that. Mine's already been clicked, but it was yours. If you haven't set it, will be there, and you just click on that and click OK. Okay, so that's that concept. So File, Options, Fields, Numbers, Numbers again, the tab. Okay, the next one would be, it'd probably take you 10 or 15 minutes to get through this the first time, and 2 or 3 minutes the second, right? So the File option, you really just need to do it once. File Options, Database, Advanced Options, check Perform Grouping on Server. And this is a speed issue. The reports are not automatically set there, so we need to go Database, Advanced Options. Okay, so Database, the Advanced Options section is here. Perform Grouping on Database. Okay. Uncheck Smart Linking. This Smart Linking is not applicable. The default set is not applicable to our application. So our application is designed in a little bit different way, probably better than the Smart Linking concept, in my opinion. So File Option, Database, Field, Explorer Options, and then check Stored Procedures. That was, let's see, Database is what we wanted right there. Check Stored Procedures, we talked about that one already. Fonts, fields, change the sizes from 10 to 8. So if you go to fonts, and then fields, this one hasn't been changed, but we typically try to get more data on there than what the 10 font will let us. So we just change all of them to 8. And these are all set, but they're all at 10 when you first install the software. Okay, so then field summary changes font and the group names and text, we just did that. And then field titles, so we did those all at one time. Okay, so then other file options to move fields or side markers just a little bit. Now this is a concept when you're really just trying to tweak the presentation a little bit. So other file and options. So file options, layout, grid options, uncheck snap to grid. And this is generally not what you do. Snap to grid. So we usually check it, but if it's checked, and I could tell it wasn't checked a little bit ago, I'll go back and forth between checked and unchecked. If I do this, see how it's really just a big jump. It's easy for me to tell if it's snapped. It'll still snap to the grid line, but it's harder to see it. We come back over here and we uncheck it. you'll notice that it'll move a lot smaller. See, it's not quite as much of a jump. So it gives you more control, but it's a lot slower and harder to work with, harder to see what's going on. So snapping to the grid lines is important because when we move our columns around, we're there. Another thing to note as far as a convention is concerned, we do 3/4 of an inch convention with that font size of 8, and that will give you 99 million essentially. I think it'll give you 100 million. It's just if it's a negative, it won't. It's only 99 million. So here we had the wrong font because we had those fonts set wrong. So hold my control key down, select multiple, and then shift. And it does them both at the same time. So you have to kind of get used to it, and you get really fast at it after you get used to it. But making it look good is important. And if you can't make it look good, do a support call. We'll tell you how to do it. Okay, so we've done that. The Field Explorer option. We're going to talk a lot about drill down reports in the next session. Show all headers on drill down. If you've ever drilled down on a report, like I'll do this, I'll say, yeah, that's not what I wanted. Say insert. Actually, I'll just copy this header, group header to the footer so we can see the same thing on both. And then I'll hide it. Right-click and click Hide, and that'll basically hide that row. I click Preview, and it just shows me my totals, right? If I double-click on it, then it gives me my subtotals. See how it has no headers? That's what we're talking about. So we go Options. Let's see, which one was it telling us? Okay, File, Report Options, which is a little different. So I'll go back over to the Design tab, File, Report Options, and then it tells me I'm going to close down my drill downs, which is fine. Show all headers on demand, on drill down. Okay, so now if I come in here and I double click on it, now it gives me my headers, and that's what that is. Okay. Okay, so today we've gone through several concepts. I'm going to cover one more concept in this session, and that's creating a simple formula. So when we highlight the formulas and we click this icon, it gives us the ability to name the formula. And we're going to call this budget code and description. And we're going to expand that, and we're going to say, expand that. We're going to say budget code plus, and we'll say single quote, dash single quote, actually space, dash space, single quote, plus, and we're going to say budget description. Okay, and so that's going to give us one field with both. And so now if I come over here, I can just delete these items and pull this in here so it's just one field rather than two. I'm going to do the same thing. That's not that big a deal. I'm going to do the same thing with my level 1 code. Except this one's, I'm going to call it my level 1 code and description. We're going to finish up here in a minute. Okay. Last concept. So level 1 code plus single quote space dash space single quote plus level 1 code description. Okay, I'm going to replace that here. Okay, and then I'm also going to do one more thing. I'm going to go to this group. I'm going to go right click. I'm going to say change group. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to say level 1 code and description. So now my group header is going to be the code and the description and a lot less cryptic. So now it's re-pulling the report together. Okay, so now our code, level 1 code and description here, instead of just O2, we're seeing O2 site work. Double click. So that gives us a start. Okay, so when we start next time, we'll cover the concepts again, just to give you a refresher. And we'll start in with some of these concepts. I appreciate you guys taking the time.